Here's a quick take from the YoJoeShow Podcast.
This morning, the world witnessing extraordinary scenes in Israel. The first images of those 20 Israeli hostages turned over as family members cried and crowds by the tens of thousands erupted in applause. And there were cheers for President Trump touching down today in Israel to announce to the world the hostages have been released and continue his push for a path towards peace. The homecoming and the reunions of families torn apart for more than 2 years, the first stage of the U.S. brokered peace deal. President Trump meeting with them and marking this historic moment by writing in a book at the Israeli parliament, "This is my great honor, a great and beautiful day, a new beginning." As the hostages return home, there are more stages to come in the process. 2,000 Palestinian prisoners set to be freed. And humanitarian aid starting to flow into Gaza, where the devastation of the war is unmistakable. Back in Tel Aviv, relief for the hostages returning home. But
there are some who are declining to celebrate this ceasefire. And it's interesting, some of the same people who have been asking for a ceasefire for well over 2 years, saying that Israel needs to draw back, Israel needs to stop. I don't know. Have we heard from Ilhan Omar? Have we heard from, I
checked AOC's Twitter
and
nothing.
Nothing.
So many of the squad, nothing. And that tells you everything, the hypocrisy that exists, that they can't bring themselves to say, hey, this was a good job. Our president did a good job.
Our president did do a phenomenal job, 100%.
The unimaginable. Most people thought it was impossible.
Just like we did with the Abraham Accords in the first round. And this really is somewhat a continuation of it, because this, let's just say the expansion of the Abraham Accords to lots of other Muslim and Arab countries couldn't have happened without Iran being gotten rid of first. And some of these other countries, Qatar learning its lesson, Hamas being destroyed, Hezbollah being eradicated, because the entire Arab world was terrified, shaking in their boots, peeing their pants from Iran. Just worth reminding people that Iran bombed Saudi Arabia's entire oil refinement and cost them like billions or trillions of dollars, right? It took them months to recover. So Iran was just terrifying everybody in the entire neighborhood. So without Israel and the United States really getting rid of this, like we mentioned earlier, it really couldn't have happened. It's worth noting that Trump has, and even before this, he had a 97% approval rate in Israel. He's far more popular in Israel than he is in the United States. I think some of what we're seeing of his approval rates in the United States just don't really coincide with reality and with what actual people in the street say. I think one of the interesting things that Bibi said during the phenomenal speech right before Trump spoke in the Knesset. Trump is the fourth American president in all of history to have the honor of speaking in the Israeli parliament. And he gave a fabulous speech. Definitely recommend you guys listen to it. It was a comedy skit. It was hysterical. It was funny. It was interesting. It was nonstop applause. Like we said, 97% of the Israeli people support Trump. The most Knesset members really love him, aside from one Arab parliament member and one Jewish parliament member who's in the Arab Party, who tried to heckle Trump and were immediately removed. And so that was a side note. But one of the things that Bibi said is that Jews have a very long history and a very long memory. And we remember the leaders who have helped us. And Trump's name goes down in this story of the Jewish people right there along with Cyrus the Great. And I think that there may never be a greater honor than that, whether you're religious or not. Just being remembered for eternity, at least a few more thousand years, is really something special. One of the things that Batya said, and in general she's very good, is that Hamas is now no longer a security problem for Israel. Instead, it's a diplomatic problem for the Arabs. Maybe if the entire part, including phases 2 and 3 of Trump's plan, ever come to fruition, what's most important is that phase 1 happened and the hostages got home, right? Phase 2, disarming Hamas, that's the real challenge. Until that happens, there's no guarantee of anything. Unfortunately, that will have to happen. We can't count on any international police force to do anything. Just a reminder, the United Nations had forces in Lebanon that were supposed to deter Hezbollah. Instead, They were like, Hezbollah threatened them a few times, and they basically started giving in to Hezbollah and then partnering with Hezbollah and then taking bribes from Hezbollah and just hanging out and just basically partying there. And then the minute there was any threat of anything, they just run away. Same with, they were there in Syria as well, and they just run away, especially if this international force is made up of Egyptians or Indonesians. There is no way that a Muslim will kill another Muslim in defense of a Jew. I wish that was possible. Just Jewish soldiers, really the only place that does happen is in the IDF. And that's what's so special about Israel. And obviously the vice versa happens all the time. Israeli Iron Dome intercept missiles that are going to hit Arab villages all the time, right? But in the Islamic mindset, it's extremely unlikely that Arab soldiers or Muslim soldiers will go to war to fight Hamas in the name of defending Israel. So Israel still has to go ahead and clear out Hamas. It won't be easy, but that is critical for all of the rest of the parts of Trump's plan to work out. I think soon we're going to watch a clan violence. Somebody's going to have to get rid of a lot of those weapons that are there. And we can't count on anybody but the IDF doing that. Nobody else has the motivation, the drive, the will, or the ability, the knowledge of the environment, the knowledge of the culture, or anything else to make that happen aside from the IDF. So unfortunately, Israel still has to finish off Hamas. It's extremely crucial, and hopefully that will happen. Just in the last video, we saw some of the protests of get rid of Bibi, we hate Bibi, this and that. It's worth noting that the radical left in Israel, funded by the Democratic Party, unfortunately, since Barack Obama came into power, at least. So I remember V15, when Obama was in power, he started funding all of these organizations to protest Bibi and to replace Bibi. So there's a very radical left-wing party in Israel. Not party even, it's just a group that are basically anybody but Bibi. I'm not necessarily Netanyahu's greatest fan, although I do think he is a leader, and not many countries have real leaders. Israel doesn't have a lot of other politicians that could be leaders, and he really is a historic leader in any kind of measurement. But a lot of these protests are funded, unfortunately, internationally, and these protesters have basically co-opted the hostage release protest, saying that the hostages will never be released if Bibi is in power. Again, thanks to Trump, that has been proven wrong, and this will reduce a lot of pressure on Israel from operating in the future. But basically, a lot of the protests have got mixed together. There are a lot of hostage parents that are like, no, we don't want ceasefire, because they were calling for ceasefire. And a lot of Israel's enemies were using this as proof. Look, Bibi is super unpopular, even though these protesters are not, there were large protests, but they don't necessarily represent that many people. Bibi is just doing it to try and hold on to power, even though the court cases against him are extremely flawed, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of this was basically the just not Bibi protests that co-opted the hostage protests, which I think is very unfortunate, but it is worth recognizing because we did see some of the signs there. I just want to note that hearing Trump tell the hostage families that their loved ones will be released, seeing their excitement, it just drives chills in anybody with a heart, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. Totally does. And the peace deal has a lot of parts to it. And they were talking, part of it was this idea of an ISF, an international stabilization force. And like you said, no one has the appetite to send some sort of paramilitary or what have you troops over there to keep the peace when there's active fighting happening in the streets still amongst various factions of people living in Gaza. That needs to get cleared up. And whether or not Hamas truly has agreed to give up its power and its arms, that's left to be seen, and talk's cheap.
Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, and watch all our content, including our In Focus episode number 6 and all our full episodes of the YoJoe Show podcast.